So, welcome to the All Things Endurance podcast. I'm your host, Rick Prince, and today we have Nell Rojas with us. And Nell is a professional runner for Nike. She's a professional coach. She's been the top American female at the Boston Marathon in 2021, 2022, and this year she almost took, I believe, a minute off of her time to run it in 2:24. So pretty fast. Nell is also the program lead for our running coach certification. So Nell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Anything I missed in the intro that you want to tell some of our listeners?
That was great. I think that did it.
Okay, awesome. Well, so I wanted to chat with you today about, obviously you're a professional, but you're also a coach, which I think is sort of a unique perspective, sort of on the sport as a whole. And I'm always interested, about any carryovers between what a professional does and, for us amateurs, or anything that you might do as a professional that, was sort of a no-go for amateurs. So those are kind of some of the things. That's the main topic I kind of wanted to speak of today. And to kick that off, are there, being a coach, are there any mistakes that you see, whether it be professionals, but mostly, people that you coach, any sort of mistakes that you see all the time, sort of standard ones across the board?
I mean, I think a big one is running too fast on easy runs. That's a really big one. And then another, what I see, and I think I understand that it's very hard to follow a program because amateur runners have, they have kids, they have jobs, they have hobbies, they have a life. I think I don't have a life, like my life is training and coaching. And I think I am lucky enough to be in a position where I kind of can do that, and have a be have back it up, be like, okay, I'm willing to really not have that other aspects of my life because I'm making money off of running and I want to go to the Olympics. But I think for these amateur runners, it's just missing runs, but not being consistent is what I see all the time. And it's me as a coach, I talk to my athletes, I really try to dial it in, okay, what's going on in their lives? How much can they handle? What is it what's their schedule like? What can we put in to make it realistic that they can obtain these miles and these workouts? We're not going to be unrealistic. We're going to make it doable for them. And then it's okay, well, guess what? If this is what you can do, then this is what your goal can be based on all these things. You cannot have an unmatched training plan and goal. And so most of my athletes, and even with doing this and talking to them, miss a lot of their runs because who knows, whatever reason. But then they continue to have the same goal. And so it's really managing expectations and really being you need to get out there. I don't care, skip the quality part of the session, but get out there for the run, because the excuses, and it's hard because I do call them excuses. I understand sometimes they're not, but can be anything. So I think those are the two things that that I see all the time are easy runs are too fast. And then people just missing so much training.
Yeah. And you make a great point, right? You're a professional. This is your job. You're training for XYZ marathon for the Olympic trials. You will do what it takes to do that. I'm not going to come to you and say, hey, you haven't trained enough for the Olympic trials. Let's bump you back down and let's shoot for the US 10K. When you say that kind of thing to any of your athletes, hey, listen, you were sick, you had all the business travel, you just haven't been getting in your training. I don't think it's realistic to train for, XYZ marathon. I think it would be better to target a 10K. What is the response to that? Is it, okay, let's do that. That makes sense. Or is it often, no, I'm still doing that marathon?
Hmm. Typically it's well received because like I'm very like, I think my athletes know I'm very honest with what I think they can do. I try not to set unrealistic expectations, but I think what I've learned with my athletes is like, to me, because I have this bird's eye view of their training and how they're doing. And I've realized throughout the years that they don't have that. And so they don't really understand like either how far off they are or how much they've missed or like how like differently the training cycle's going than the last one. So I think what I've seen a lot is like when I have these conversations, and usually it's not like do the 10K instead of the marathon. Usually it's like, no, you could do the marathon, but like you can't have that same time goal that you may have wanted before.
Hmm.
Um, and usually they understand, they'll listen to it, but in their head, we talk after and I'm like, whoa, what happened? Like we talked about a plan and then you just went for it. And they're like, yeah, I went for it, and then and I'm like, okay, like as long as you understand why you blew up, and they do, they
Yeah.
do. And so I do think like after talking to them, these people do understand. I think most of the time they're thankful that I like it almost like relieves this like anxiety that they have because like they kind of know it's off,
Mhm. Yeah.
and but yeah, like running is the most, and I've said this a lot recently, it's the most un it's like it's very misunderstood. And I
Hmm.
think it's very, very misunderstood unless, and like I hope people don't get mad at me for this, but like from what I see, unless like you have like and this is not true of everyone, but like I think high school runners and college runners have like this like kind of understanding of like, okay, training, this is what training looks like, this is what it takes, and then this is kind of like what the result will bring. um and otherwise I think there's like a misconception of like what you got to do in practice to do what you want to do in the race.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but that makes sense. Yeah, I guess people that haven't had prior, maybe athletic or just overall or running experience, there's not that
If it's not ingrained.
correlation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause right. You're like, I ran in college and the coach is like, okay, you're going to do this workout. And the reason why you're doing it is because of X, Y, and Z. So you sort of understand.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. That's really interesting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now,
And it's interesting, like,
obviously,
I was
oh, go
gonna say,
ahead.
like, like I was talking to one of my clients the other day who was like, now like marathon training isn't like as hard as it's not even that hard. And I was like, you missed all of your runs last week. Like you literally missed you didn't run last week and you ran once this week. I'm like, you're like, but she thinks she's marathon training. And I'm like,
Right. Marathon training is the best.
yeah. I'm like, and then I was like, oh, like, first of all, you like, and like I can't give people usually we start with a little bit and then we'll build, obviously, right? But not so obviously, because I can't give people, if they don't complete a week, I'm not going to give them more. You know what I mean?
Right.
So then we're just like
Right.
stuck at that week. And I'm like, oh my God. And then they're like, no, like I need to add strength. And I'm like, you need to run. Like, I don't know.
Right.
It's just like, as a coach, I've coached so many people. It's like literally everyone.
That's so interesting.
Mhm.
That's funny, but not funny at the same
Yeah.
time.
So like I've learned like it is like my job to like educate them on that stuff because it
Yeah.
isn't to some people it's not intuitive.
Right. Right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I would never have put those two together as something that wouldn't be intuitive. So
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Uh, so obviously, for any athlete, pro, amateur, whatever, rest and recovery is critical to the training process. What are some things that you and maybe some of your fellow professionals do that that maybe, us amateurs don't do or don't really truly understand the importance of, again, maybe not a specific modality per se, but is there anything
Mhm.
in that realm that you feel like, again, maybe with your athletes, that stuff that you do to help recover that you just see them just not doing and maybe it hampers their performance on race day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like any type of stress, your body takes it the same. So like anytime, like what I've had to learn the hard way is like, after running 115 miles a week, like you don't come home, throw on your jeans and go back out to like meet friends, or you don't
Mm,
come home, grab, a banana and take your kids to a play date. So, I think the elite level athletes, like it's you come home, you have some really intentional rest, you turn your brain off, you turn your body off, and you get those like recovery hormones going like as soon as possible, and you keep the stress very, very low. And that's something I'm like still not great at. And I think that's the one thing that's missing is like, you need intentional just like downtime, which I don't think most runners have, because they have so much other stuff going on. And so like, the runners that are amateur runners have full-time jobs and want to run 115 miles a week, like I see it burn them out really quickly,
sure.
because they just don't get that same recovery.
Yeah. And I think to your point, probably people think of recovery like, okay, I got to put on my, recovery boots, or I need to get in a
Mhm.
cold bath, but they don't think of it in just in terms of overall stress is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I learned from being in Kenya for a little bit was like the Kenyans truly like they run and then they like rest, and they have
Mm,
it's low stress, it's chill, and they take naps. And I think that is like one of the reasons, that's like a huge reason why they're the best runners in the world.
yeah. So for that brings up an interesting topic, because I think for a lot of age groupers, they choose maybe the marathon they want to go to because they want to go check out that city, Philly, New York, LA, whatever. They want to go
Mhm.
see it. And, you know, I'm assuming that maybe if they get there early, they're walking it around, they're doing all this sightseeing, and they're not
Mhm.
equating that to potentially hurting their performance, or even afterwards, right? Like you do the race, you hang out for another day, walking all around the city, and they don't see that you're probably hurting your recovery as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And it depends. Like, when I take on an athlete, like one of the first questions is like, why do you run? What's your goal? And if their goal is to travel and see the world and like run in these like beautiful places, and it's less time oriented, then I'm like, yeah, let's pick some like stellar courses, um,
Sure.
and go do your thing. But like once it becomes like, hey, now this is my goal, and I'm like, okay, well, you're really putting in a lot of effort and this is going to take a really good day, then it's like, look, make smart decisions. And like you do have to make these smart decisions, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But then like it always comes back where we'll have our post race debrief and they'll be like, I walked around too much, and you're like, okay, good, hopefully you'll learn from that for the next one, because like you have to learn that lesson.
Sure, sure. We did a podcast a while back ago with Ben Rosario, the head coach of the Hoka Northern Arizona Elite team, and he was talking about rest and recovery. And he said, everyone has time goals for their workouts, right? Like I want to hit this for my 800, this for my mile, I want to do this in races. Like, but no one ever puts time goals on theirs. For example, sleep. Like I really am focusing on getting 9 hours of sleep each night. That's my goal. It's like, well, no one does that. Maybe a lot more of us should, and
Oh my
really
gosh,
prioritize that stress or prioritize that rest.
absolutely. I mean, it's all about the sleep. That's like the number one thing, like I've honestly, I had I was talking to one of my coaches yesterday, not my dad, but my strength coach and my nutrition coach. And it was like really like this summer, like, it is gonna be hot. Like we have to get up early to run before it gets to be 100 degrees. But at this point, like I am like, I have a hard time falling asleep, and my body is just like set. Like I'm like one of those people who like naturally it would be like midnight to like 8:30 is like my natural
Mm,
state. But so it's like I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? It's not even, most times it's like the sleep is worth it for me because I can't nap either. So I'm like, I will sleep in and then I will run on the treadmill. And that's like, that's how it has to be. That's how important sleep is.
yeah, interesting, interesting. Um, so for you personally, since the time when maybe you started running, maybe not as a professional to the point where you are now, what are some significant changes that have occurred, whether it be rest and recovery or the types of workouts you're doing, or just any sort of realizations you've had in that process from where you started to where you are now? Anything like that
Hmm.
as far as training or racing progression that you've really learned from?
It's just like, it's been a really hard lifestyle change. Because I went from, CIM in 2018, I was one of those people who I probably missed at least one run a week. I probably missed a couple work, like to like completely having to rearrange my lifestyle to eat healthier, get more sleep, not go out, not, like rest. And I think that's like the number one, that's the biggest difference. Like, yeah,
Mm,
my workouts have gotten like a little bit faster and like maybe like a little bit longer, like the volume's a little bit more. But the biggest thing is my lifestyle.
mm, got it. That makes sense. That makes
Mhm.
sense.
Which is
You know,
the hardest thing about this whole this whole thing, this whole running thing is having to have a lifestyle that is like honestly boring for
yeah,
most people.
yeah,
Like it's not for me. Like I'm really excited to like do all this and like, have the potential to make an Olympic team and to like get faster. Like to me that like amps me up, and it's like, but like, it's not, it doesn't work very well unless your significant other is also doing the same thing, like
right.
it just doesn't work in relationships. Like I started my relationship being a very different person, and then like now it's like that's not what my partner signed up for. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that's not going
Right.
well. um, um so that's the hardest part about this whole thing. Like the running is like the easy part.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Mhm.
Well, it's a shame I don't have the genetics to be a professional runner, because I'm like, if there's ever an Olympics for napping, I would gold medal
Oh,
straight out. I
yeah.
I would nap all day.
That's a good skill to have, though. I
It
wish I
is
had that
maybe,
skill.
yeah, probably too good at it. Probably don't get nearly as much as accomplished as I should be during the day
Yeah.
because of it. But um, so you had mentioned earlier, that you had worked with, your strength coach, nutrition coach, and you hear it all the time with especially professionals in any sport, that it takes a village. It takes all these people to really help out, to contribute their part so that you can deliver on race day. And there's so many things, right? There's strength coach, nutrition. I'm sure there's a million different types of support structures out there for the age grouper. Is there any, as far as the village is concerned, are there
Mhm.
any specific roles out there that you would say, okay, if you had to pick one role aside from maybe the primary coach, this is what you would need?
A partner, if you're in a relationship, you need a partner that's like on board.
Hmm.
I mean, that's like, I mean, especially because I coach a lot of moms. I coach a lot of married women. Um, and if they don't have someone who is like willing to support them, um, the stress is just like too high, and they just don't have that leeway to train. So I would say like that's the number one thing.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see how there could also be like guilt, like you're leaving me at home with the baby or
Oh, I
whatnot
hear
while
that
you're
all the
out
time.
there. just having a great time running, and I'm out here,
Yeah.
home cleaning up vomit and poop and what.
Yeah. Which is like, like as we were at the track the other day and all the moms were like, well, my husband's a doctor, but he can't figure out how to make a PB&J for my kid. They're like,
Right.
so I got to go home and help with that.
Right.
Okay. So it is guilt. I've heard like one of my teammates say like, I feel guilty going to this race because like then my husband has to take care of the kid, and so
Yeah.
it is like having that reassurance from your partner, like, no, like go do your thing, like this is important to you, like this is what like how you're going to spend your like time for yourself. And
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a real thing for sure. Um, one of the things I got asked when I was working as a personal trainer and coach, they asked me, why do these marathon, I lived in New York City, there were all those New York Roadrunner races, they run races every weekend. And the question was, why do pros like only race like one or two, maybe three times a year? Like I've already done 9 marathons this year.
Yeah.
Like, you know, um, so for those, let's say I'm a client of yours and I come to you and say, hey, Nell, I want to run these 23 marathons this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
I guess what would be your response, and why is it that pros only run, just a handful of marathons per year, maybe even one or two, whereas a lot of age groupers, will run every other weekend. They're out there doing a marathon.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I actually get it. I get like a lot of people come to me and they're like, I have this, and then the next week I have this marathon, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And which is fine. Like that's kind of, they find a challenge and they find inspiration um in training for these like marathons, and that's what it's about for a lot of people, is like doing something really hard. um and I think that's just like not what it's about for the elite runners. Like it's
Yeah.
not about, like, I don't think we have this need to like prove ourselves in a way where it's like we have to like do like many things, because I think a lot of people, like maybe they're not fast, so they're like, oh, I have to run 100 mile, and maybe they're doing it because they love it, but maybe it's also like they have to prove to themselves that they're tough, or they have to prove to other people that like they're doing something hard, or they need some
Hmm.
sort of like like energy and like attention around like what they're doing. And this is
Yeah.
just like my observation.
Yeah.
um which is fine. But I think as an elite runner, like we're trying to like completely empty our tank and like give it our all. And it just happens that like after you like put in, if you have enough power and if you have the ability to actually give it your all and race a marathon, then it takes a while to recover from that.
Yeah.
Um, and you really like, you might be able to get away with running one like a couple months later. Like there are some people who can do that, but are they A+ efforts? No, they're not.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
the next one's 90, 85, 90%. You know what I mean? And that's not like, unless there's a reason, like it's like world championships, or like, there can be reasons sometimes where elites get opportunities to run marathons for some reason, but yeah, I think it just takes so long to recover from a full effort.
Yeah. And you made that's interesting. You said that about an A+ effort, because I think I'm sure I'm in this boat that probably most of us don't know what an A+ effort is. Like, yes, I go out and run hard. Yes, that race was tough, but I don't think, compared to a professional, most age groupers probably know what really an A+ effort is. Like, if I'm being completely honest, all the things it requires, what it feels like, how to, finish completely on empty.
Mhm.
I bet most don't. I bet that's, maybe also a distinction between, us age groupers and the elites.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it takes like the elites, like we're really like riding basically like just below our threshold, like we're like almost like above our threshold where we're like going anaerobic and using other pathways besides our aerobic pathways. And so like we have that ability. For most people, maybe that's like a half marathon for them. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And they can race
Yeah.
hard for a half marathon, but they cannot race hard. They just don't have the endurance to race hard for a full marathon. So it becomes more of like they don't have the capacity to go hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought of this as well. There's the whole pain tolerance and pain threshold, right? Where everyone has a similar threshold, pros and amateurs, but the difference is, right, that you probably have a much higher tolerance for it than the average. First, how much do you think that plays into it as well, as far as being able to tolerate discomfort over, say a marathon?
I have no idea. I don't know about that. Like, I think I can handle mental, um, I can handle my like maybe like emotions better than some people. And I know
Mhm.
that just from like hearing them talk about their race and like going through these like crazy like highs and lows and like like it's like dramatic, whereas like I think a lot of elite runners, like they just like don't have like they don't react or respond to those. It's more like, all right,
Mhm.
I'm gonna like keep on pressing. Like, I have the same thoughts. I have the same like give up thoughts. I have the same like this is stupid, it doesn't matter thoughts. Like those pop into my head every single race. Do I act on right? Do I act on them? Like maybe probably not as much as like an amateur athlete. And it's funny as it sounds, like I think, when I'm having a bad day, I'm able to push through more than like maybe an amateur athlete will be like, oh, like maybe their egos get a little bit too far in the way where they're like, they think it matters more than it does.
Mhm.
So I don't know about actually pain tolerance.
Mhm.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I think mental and emotional stability or something.
Yeah. Got it. No, that makes sense. That does
Yeah.
make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, So, there's a lot of talk. I feel like you can't pick up a running magazine or go to a running website without, hearing the term super shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know if a lot of, it's almost like, because it's something that can be marketed and you can, to a degree, obviously buy speed and so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. For those amateurs, maybe some of your athletes that come to you and say, hey, I really need, to get these pair of shoes to be able to PR, to do whatever, you know, what's what's your response, and how important are super shoes? I mean, obviously it has to fit and feel good and so on and so forth, but I didn't know, like, in this current day, how important you feel these super shoes are, for not for professionals that, we're talking about sort of that last 1% or whatnot, but just for us age groupers.
I say very important. I
Okay.
tell all my athletes, if they're racing and they want to race fast, these shoes will help.
Yep.
Um, and so, I tell them right away, like start looking, because it takes forever to find your super shoe and like what works for
Sure.
you. And everyone's very, very, very different in what they like and what helps them.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it does a couple things. I think it increases longevity because like you're not getting that pounding. I think it helps develop speed because you can run a little bit faster.
Hmm.
It helps recovery. And I think, yeah, they're expensive, but I'm like, look, if you're investing all this time and money into like training and to coaching, then like they are completely worth it.
Yeah, no, that
Mhm,
makes sense. That makes
mhm.
sense. And most people, obviously, when you tell them that, they're like, "Oh, that makes sense. That makes the price tag worth it."
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Mhm.
So one of the things you had mentioned earlier about, actually in the last question, we were talking about sort of, that you feel like you might be able to handle sort of the mental aspect of, running hard more. That's another thing I feel like that's gotten a lot of attention these days, is sort of the mental game. It's
Mhm.
almost like it was sort of nutrition, strength training, that maybe it's like the final frontier. What are some things that you do or that other professionals do maybe to work on their mental game that, us age groupers might be able to benefit from? Is there anything in particular, or is it just sort of just I don't know if you work with a sports psychologist or anything that you've picked up throughout your training?
I think the most important thing is consistency and continuing to show up, not putting any weight on one single workout, and understanding that like a bad workout or a bad race like is to be expected, and it's okay. So like, I have a lot of athletes who come off of a bad race and they're very emotional about it, and like they like are mad at themselves, and like they let their egos take over, um instead of like coming off a bad race being like, all right, understood, that's part of the process, like I'm not scared of that, there's no fear in that, line up again. Okay, I've proved to myself over and over and over again that no matter if I'm having a good day, a bad day, or a mediocre day, I can I can do the best I can that day, and I can like continue to do that. Um and so like that to me creates this mental toughness where your ego's not there. You're not scared. You understand training. That's one big part of it. Um, Another part is um, like correctly planning is like huge. We don't have any outlandish goals, or like we don't have any crazy expectations that like don't match our training.
Mhm.
Because if those don't match up, then there's going to be anxiety. You're going to freak out if you've told the whole world that you're going to set an American record, and that puts tons of pressure on yourself. Like I feel like it's just being very methodical, very logical, and like practicing that in workouts and practicing that in races. And then there's really no reason to freak out or panic.
Yeah.
Because like, all right, doesn't matter.
Yeah. And to your point, in obviously in your mind, right? Like bad races happen. That's part of the process, kind of like check off the box next. Whereas do you find that some of your athletes, especially if they've had maybe back-to-back, bad races, it almost like they feel like it defines them, like, oh, I'm just a crappy runner. I'll never be good at this. I suck. I'm not that I'm going to quit, but oh God, what do you find that a lot, or do they start to kind of come around to like, hey, this is just unfortunately or fortunately part of the process. I'm going to learn from it and get better.
um I think a lot of them like they do get really down on themselves. They do let it like kind of define who they think it defines who they are. But I think like talk like, continuing to like give them that message, like, look, part of the process, like you've had these great workouts, you've gotten faster, you're a great runner, like get rid of your ego, like no
Yeah.
more ego, that's like the number one thing. And I feel like, like consistency, like if you can get them coming back and being like excited about their bad races, then they'll start to learn, most of them will, it all depends on the athlete.
Sure, sure. So last thing, and this also goes back to maybe what we were talking about before about, the professionalism of a professional. Um, Taper tantrums. I hear it all the time. People, they think they're losing fitness, so they break their taper,
Mhm,
or they just hate it because, they're just sitting around or not running
mhm.
as much. Again, back to my napping. I used to love tapering because I got to just not do as much. It was like the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
thing ever. But I feel like I'm in the minority. Do you kind of get that like jittery, like I need to be doing more? Or is it like, okay, this is a process, this is what it is? And then, of course, with your athletes, do you find a lot of them having the taper tantrums and being like, oh my God, I'm getting slower. I need to go out and do a 100-mile run today.
Yeah. I think, um, I think if you like, as a coach, if I'm like, talk to them about the taper, I'm confident in the taper, and like, you explain to them like, look, there's no fitness being built in this last, like 10 days here, less is more. Um, I feel like they'll be confident and they'll go into it well. Of course, it's nerve-wracking. You never know. It's always different. The taper, you always feel different. You're always coming off of a different build. You're always like in a different space. And it never, like, I don't believe in that. So maybe for like 5Ks or 10Ks, but for like marathon builds, I don't believe, like, some people like always have the same taper and they're like, I know this works. I know this works. That's really hard for me just because like it's so different every time.
Hmm.
Um, so I think, what I realized is like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. This is it, whatever I decide is gonna be the right decision. I will get nervous. And yeah, I learn every time. I do something ridiculous every time, still me as a professional. And I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have changed that. So yeah, it is tapering is really hard. And it's like, it is honestly like one of the hardest things to nail as a coach with people, because it is so in the head, it's so psychological. And so there are some tricks like, you know, put in their training peaks instead of like just like a day off or like a 3-mile run. It's like, all right, you're gonna journal 3 things like how you felt, you're gonna do your breathing exercises, you're gonna do these drills, so you kind of keep them engaged in different ways.
Yeah. And when you say the taper, probably like a lot of other areas of training, where the longer you've been a runner, the more historical data you have to reference, probably the more dialed in you can get it. Like, okay, the last time I did XYZ and that didn't go so well, so I'm going to do this and it went a little bit better. And would
Mhm.
you say that there's also, like, for example, if you have a brand new runner that's never done a marathon or done much running, I'm assuming that it's a little bit more of kind of throwing darts at a dartboard with the taper than it would be if someone's done 20 marathons and you have this sort of historical information to go against.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a taper is like everyone's different. Everyone, like, it's trial and error. And I think, you know, the most important thing is like, I just tell people like, just don't do too much. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is trial and error, a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah, got it. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been great. It's always fascinating to me personally to talk to people like yourself that are professionals and just see the clear distinctions, because I think a
Mhm.
lot of people be like, well, I run far, I run harder, I ride my bike hard. And it's not until I really talk to people like yourself, I'm like, oh, I mean, aside from the genetic part,
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's what you're doing differently. You actually sleep at night. That's
Mhm.
okay.
Right. And it's, I think we still in this mentality of like, more is better, harder is better, no pain, no gain. And that's like
Sure.
1000% not the truth, especially for
Mhm.
marathon runners. It's like, I have to beg some of my athletes. I'm like, look, we're not just like training to train unless you want to, unless like that's
Yeah.
why you're training. Then like, sure, we can like train to just like do as much as possible. But like that, if you want to run a fast time, like you got to back off and you have to like train very smart. It's not about like, it's just about being smart. And it's about
Yeah.
timing too. Timing is like the biggest one, because I know tons of elite level athletes who like, run really, really fast, but it's just never at the right time.
Yeah.
So I think that's also huge. And that takes patience and it takes trust from your coach and yourself and your training, which is something that's hard to establish. It's something that takes a long time. I know for at least like me and my coach, like it took like a while to like trust the process and trust like,
Mm,
okay, like, yeah, I don't have to be in my tip top shape 8 weeks before the marathon. Like I do have to back off a little bit. Um, so I think that's also a big deal.
yeah, yeah. Now that definitely makes sense. And again, it's one of those things where I feel like, you know, owning this education company, you know, that puts out coaches, you know, we get a lot of feedback from them. And I think that is one piece that a lot of people overlook is the trusting the coach, you know, that what they say is, and again, that makes sense. You wouldn't, there's nothing to go off of when you first start, but to
Mhm.
trust the process and to kind of let the results speak themselves. And maybe it wouldn't be a good match between the athlete and the coach, but give it its due diligence, give it its time to see how things work out.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I think USCA does a great job in that, especially with the certification that I just was part of. I think that was like the main thing that these coaches got out of it was, they had all this really great information, but then they were able to be like, all right, so how do you like give your athlete that confidence, like
Yeah.
how do I get them to trust me? How do you communicate with them in this way? Like, what if they come to me like this? So I thought that was really cool part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely can't diminish the art side of the the
No,
coaching
no, you
process.
can't.
That's for sure. Maybe it's just as much, maybe if not more important than the science side often case.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it is truly an art.
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Again, I know you've got a lot on your plate with the sponsorship stuff and your athletes and training. And I wish you all the best, and especially in the lead up to the Olympic trials.
Yeah,
So,
thanks,
and
Rick.
when is that again? That's February,
February
right?
3rd. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Awesome. Awesome.
So
Well,
got
good
some
stuff. Yeah.
thanks.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah.
All right. Take care now.
All right, bye, Rick. Talk to
Yep.
you
Bye
soon.
bye. You got it.